Welcome to the Hey Kings podcast, brought to you by Vermeer, your expert in hay and forage equipment. James, welcome back to the podcast.
Hey, John. Good to be back. What were some other key interesting things that you didn't expect to see, or sort of things that stuck out?
Now, we've already talked about the inconceivable nature of rail in Australia, but they make up for it with their trucking. If I say the phrase "B double" to you, you know exactly what I'm talking about, because it's like the most normal average truck that you would see in Australia. Then you start getting into A doubles. This is where I get a little gray and fuzzy on this, but certainly there were A trailers pulled, 40-foot A trailers pulled behind 40-foot trailers attached to the prime mover, attached to the semi, right?
Mm-hmm.
That combination, I don't think, is legal anywhere in the U.S.
The 240-foot trailers.
The 240, and I hope somebody doesn't throw rocks at me for my ignorance here, but I've seen triples I know in Nevada they can have triples, in Oregon they can pull triples, and they can put a lot of hay on a trailer. Those Aussies. I took a picture of the legal combinations that can be pulled in Australia, and I'm going to see if I can pull it up here really quick. And I'm just going to read off some of these because they're staggering combinations. So you have the B double, and then you have the A double. So you can have two 40-foot ocean containers pulled by a semi at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then you can have B triples. So
I don't know what a B triple is.
Right. So that would be a B train. And if you're in trucking in the U.S., you know what I'm talking about. But it's a trailer hooked to the semi, and then a B trailer behind that, and then another B trailer behind that.
Got it. Yep. And
then an AB triple is a 40-foot trailer, and then I don't know how long the A trailer is, maybe a 20 or 24, somewhere in there, as an A trailer, and then another 40-foot B trailer behind that. And then they have A triples. Now, I'm told that that's more of a Northern Territory, Western Australia kind of combination.
Yeah, and I think a lot of those setups you would see more up north in Western Australia and Northern Territory, where the distances are even greater than where you visited. But certainly the B double is pretty stock standard.
But I think they're putting 68 bales, 3x4s, on a B double.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And that would be, the bottom layer of bales would be on edge, 3 wide. So it's over width. And then stacked 4 high. So 3 on edge, and then the next 3 layers would be on the strings. So they're stacking one higher than you can stack anywhere in the U.S.
I personally haven't seen that, but yeah, that sounds right. I know it's pretty common to go 3 or 4 on the strings. Depends on the weight of the bales and how well they stack.
Right.
Yeah, not uncommon to see a lot of B doubles with both grain and hay. So, flatbed trailer, but you also see a lot of grain B doubles getting around.
Yep. That was interesting too.
All 100 tons of grain in one truck.
Ah, yeah. I mean, it's nothing to have 100 tons of hay or grain on a truck.
Yeah.
That is not the heaviest load that I heard while I was there.
Yeah, and a lot of the farms you visited would probably have their own trucking.
Yep.
And they'd be doing those, pretty standard. There is, even though it's not a nationally regulated industry, technically it is fairly standardized between the states, and
right.
There's pretty heavy restrictions on where those trucks can go.
Yeah.
As you could imagine,
you can't
they wreck the roads pretty good if it's not a major highway.
Yeah, you definitely can't take A triples everywhere in Australia. That's, and I don't even think you can take the A.
Even the B doubles. In the B doubles, there's a lot of roads. I mean, you can obviously go to a field on a minor road, but they're kind of strongly encouraged to go on certain certain highways.
Yeah, absolutely.
To just maintain the integrity of the roads, which that can be a problem in the country. The end of harvest.
The roads get pretty rough.
Those tiny little country roads don't like it much when there's 100 tons rumbling across them.
Right.
Multiple times a day. But
right.
That's interesting that the trucking stood out to you, and you touched on it before, that you could kind of make a fortune trucking in Australia. So that's something that was different to America.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when we're so used to 18-wheelers, just the regular B double, like the smallest B double, has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 axles. 7 axles, including the steer axles. But 6 times 4 is 24 tires.
Mm.
And then, so like the B double would have 26 tires.
Mm. Yeah, you don't want to get a puncture.
And that's the smallest one, right?
Yeah.
No, I was talking to some guys in South Australia that ran prefabricated houses up to Western Australia when they had a bridge go out.
Mm-hmm.
And they were running A-triples in Western Australia. So just a big gargantuan long setup. And they had 3 of them. And it was and it was a third of a mile to walk around and and knock the tires with a hammer.
Yeah, I could imagine that. I mean, they would call that a road train.
Oh,
that's the colloquial name. Is like, oh, we've got a road train. But yeah, that's pretty serious. And that's the distances in Northern Australia are just so extreme. For you'll see road trains of not just hay and grain, but also cattle.
Yep,
coming off the big stations to get to the ports. There's some great photos if you kind of want to look that up of three long trailers of cattle. So loading those would be a fun job.
That was one of the other things I kind of took away is when they go to load those road trains, there is absolutely no way, when you're pulling A-triples, there's absolutely no way to get to the back of the front 2 trailers. So here in the States, our cattle haulers have stairs to get from the lower level to the upper level. All of those trucks are loaded from the side, and they'll have 2 ramps, one to load the bottom and one to load the top. External ramps, like what I would call a loading chute, but it's a double-decker loading chute.
That's for the road trains.
Correct, yeah.
The A-triples, yeah. So that's...
Well, I think, but I saw that on just about every... I think even the B doubles that are set up for cattle hauling.
Yeah, some of the B doubles we've had at the farm at home have got the stairs, the hydraulic stairs.
Sure.
And they load from the back. So there's 2 trailers and the trailers are connected.
Oh, I didn't see any like that. That's interesting.
Yeah. Because a lot of the sheep is still very popular in Australia as a livestock to run. So those double deckers will turn into 4 rows of sheep.
I saw more sheep in the 2.5 weeks that I was there than I had in the entire rest of my life put together.
Yeah, I could imagine that. Yeah, sheep aren't so big in America.
Oh, I didn't tell you about at Hopeton, and I'm not picking on Hopeton. I dearly, dearly loved this, but at the pub that night when we went to get dinner, the menu was lamb chops, mash, and veg. Mm-hmm. And that was it.
Anything you like. Yeah, anything you like as long as you like lamb, huh?
Anything you like, so long as it was lamb chops, mash, and veg. Mashed potatoes and vegetables.
Following the, what was it? Henry Ford model on colours for his Model T.
And
any colour you want as long as it's black.
That's it. That's it. But the lamb chops were absolutely delicious.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, a lot of sheep still around there. Yeah, Australia has still got a lot of sheep. A lot of sheep in New Zealand as well, but yeah, Australia's got a lot of sheep.
Yep. And big frame sheep. There's probably not a lot of sheep folks listening to this, but there were some really big frame sheep that I saw. Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, certainly
in the areas you're in, you probably saw probably be merino sheep. Did they say for wool?
Yep.
Probably looking at like wethers.
I think these sheep would have been 3.5 feet at the shoulder. Certainly 3 foot tall at the shoulder. Big animals, much bigger than I'm used to.
Yeah, and that's kind of typical of those type of animals further south, you'll see a lot of guys do crossbred sheep for meat production, and they can be a little smaller, chunkier guys that grow fast. And
I did get to see one kind of old style shearing shed. That was pretty neat.
Yeah, it would have been. I think a lot of the farms you visited would have started as sheep farms.
Yeah,
when they all first settled, and they probably have a shearing shed somewhere, but I'm not sure how much it gets used relative to what it was used in the past.
Let's take a break there, and we'll get a word from our sponsor.
With the 605N, I feel I can go to the field and we just bail. We're not stopping. We're not adjusting. It's ready to go, and it goes. I spend more time bailing with less issues that I've had with other balers in the past. I'm Ken Moses, and I get more hay put up right with the 605N Premier Baler.
Hear the full story at makinghay.com/haykings.
There were several discussions about doing away with the sheep as we were there. Like, I think I was pretty fortunate to still see bales of wool. I think if I were there in another 5 years, it'd be awful hard to find bales of wool on the farm.
Yeah, I think a lot of, the sheep are good, but they are a lot of work. It's the common complaint. They're good in terms of give you more flexibility in your operation, but finding labour to shear them and crutch them. So crutching sheep involves basically you're not giving them a full haircut, you're just giving them a haircut around their butt to stop fly strike. Not too many kids leaving school grow up to wanting to do that as a career.
Right.
Go and shear, go and give sheep's buttholes free of fly strike. So it is hard to get the shearers to come. That's sort of half the battle. And at the moment, unfortunately, the price of sheep have dropped quite a lot, and so has wool. So wool and sheep had a pretty strong renaissance the last 5 years or so. So I think that's probably kept a lot of these guys in sheep longer, but it's dropped right back recently. So it might not, the shearing shed might be empty permanently for a lot of guys, I think, in the next few years.
There was definitely a lot of sentimentality around those conversations of getting rid of the sheep because, like you said, those farms were built on sheep.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And now we haven't touched on cutting down trees and how that's completely socially unacceptable. But that's a thing in Australia. And my perspective as an American is at some point cutting down all the trees was highly encouraged. And at some point everybody looked around and went, wow, we did it. We cut them all down. They're all gone. That's a little bit of an exaggeration, but not a lot. Because a lot of that country was cleared.
Yeah, a lot of that Mallee was cleared by those World War I returned servicemen. There's a strong discussion. Australia, as an overall nation, as an Australian who's lived in America for 5 years, is far more liberal in general.
Yes,
not everyone, but in general, the nation as a whole, adding everyone together, is more liberal. More leftward leaning, and certainly the more Europe, leans more towards Europe in terms of its thinking as a nation in terms of climate change, what we need to do about climate change, environmental stuff like
that would be my take.
Tree
as well.
cutting, and there's strong discussion that a lot of people will say things like Hopeton was a good idea in that area, and there's people who live there, but I've heard a lot of people will say, like, maybe the government should just buy some of those farms and put it back to how it was, and then we'd help meet our agreements for climate change, emissions reduction, because then all those farms would be covered in trees again. So that's if you had said that in the Hopeton pub, John, you would have had a colourful discussion, I bet. But
I have the good sense
didn't go there.
I'm not sure that I'd have that opinion to start with. I'd have to think on that a whole lot.
Yeah,
but
it's funny though, because the Australian government did buy a farm of about 100,000 acres in Western New South Wales just recently, and they turned it into a national park. So,
fascinating!
That happened in just the last couple of months. So it is, And that type of country wouldn't be too dissimilar to what you saw around there.
Right.
And yeah, it was cleared for sheep. Now sheep aren't so good, broadacre farming is sustaining, modern farming is, those guys are, as I said earlier, on the cutting edge of no-till farming.
For sure.
They've got to be. Otherwise, they don't survive. It's pretty tough up there. But yeah, they've got some fantastic innovations that come out of that region that everyone else benefits from.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Very, very innovative farmers that I saw.
Certainly the no-till in Australia was huge. That's really pretty prevalent everywhere, even in areas that do get more rain. You don't see a lot of tilling the soil. Maybe every few years, just to break the resistance to Roundup and other herbicides. But that's pretty much half of the course. That was something that surprised me a lot here. Was driving around in the Midwest of guys out in November, December, ploughing in the corn stalks, ploughing in the soy,
right,
and then doing it again in March and April, with the big heavy disc plows, just really ripping that black soil up. I was like, "What are they doing?" And I'm like, "You're doing it all wrong.
They're going to destroy it.
He's doing it wrong." But
I could see how you got there. Yeah, I think some of those guys are raising 2 ton to the acre oat hay crops. I mean, you shorten everything, but oat and wheat and that drove me a little crazy. But they're raising 2 ton oat hay crops on 10 inches of rain. Yeah,
unbelievable, really. And that's the no-till precision points, all of that stuff was really sort of started as
seeding between the stubble rows from last year.
Yeah,
so that precision seeding, agriculture.
No burn, not burning the stubble.
Definitely no burning the stubble.
The Birchup Cropping Group, which is a town. Birchup is a town very close to Hopeton, which is there's a Birchup Cropping Group, which is kind of well renowned in Australia as a research area that developed a lot of that technology and information that is pretty common in Australia now. Yeah, seeding between the rows, GPS, controlled rows,
controlled traffic. I saw a lot
controlled
of
traffic. Yeah,
I would call it controlled traffic. I saw a lot of that just about everywhere. The fertilizer spreaders, the sprayers, all of that stuff is on controlled traffic. So when it tends to be a little bit wetter and squishier and muddier, they're really staying in the tracks. And then when it comes to hay harvest, they do the best that they can to stay on the controlled traffic. It's not perfect, but a lot.
I'm sure a lot of the farms you visited probably have. I've seen some of these photos of paddocks, of fields in the 70s and 80s that are just with the sort of technology processes they were using back then that were just sandy, and then since then those same fields
lush and green
have got some lush green, huge yield crops.
Yes,
that they've just been able to transform with no-till and controlled traffic and effective herbicide control.
Yep.
Really doing away with some of the other practices that were pretty common at the time of like burning the stubble. Now they mulch it, all of that stuff.
Yeah. Let's finish with the utes. I would probably call it a pickup.
Yeah.
And not a pickup truck.
For utility. Mm-hmm.
Right. These are generally smaller pickup trucks. Pickups.
So if you were to describe, a lot of the American guys here, like the F-150 is kind of the classic pickup, or the Ram 1500, or the what's the other one?
That would be too big.
Yeah, they're significantly bigger than what an Australian farmer will drive around.
Yes.
The most common type of vehicle there that the Australian farmer drives around is called a ute, UTE, just short for utility, as in a utility vehicle. And they have a tray like a pickup. They're 4-wheel drive. They're almost always diesel turbo though. So they have huge, pretty strong torque for a relatively small engine. Great pulling power. But they're a lot smaller. Toyota Land Cruiser, Toyota Hilux are kind of some of the common ones. But what was your impression of them, John?
Well, so part of this has to do with my commentary on how flat Australia is. nobody in Australia builds bridges to speak of.
Mm-hmm.
You just put snorkels on your utes, so when it does flood, you can drive down through the water and back up out the other side and keep going.
Yeah, that's okay. That's one way to look at it. Yeah, all the civil engineers skipped bridge building day. Just said, don't worry about it.
They really did. There are precious few bridges in Australia, and even like culverts escape the imagination of most Australians.
Well, it rains so infrequently. I guess the thinking is, as we mentioned earlier, that the Murray River, which Australia,
it's just a big creek,
River,
yeah.
It's just a big creek compared to something like the Mississippi or the what's the other one, the Lewis?
Well,
there's runs east-west in America.
Well, there's the Columbia River in the Northwest. There's the Colorado River.
Yeah, something like the Colorado River. I mean, it really doesn't compare at all.
I reckon it's like the Colorado as it crosses the Mexican border.
Yeah.
And for anybody that knows that it really doesn't anymore, it's not that much of a stretch. There are times where the Murray goes dry.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very much, as you mentioned, with those farmers up in Queensland, making the most of the floods when they're there. I mean, that's where it starts. And then it filters down through Western New South Wales. That's the Darling. Sorry, the Darling connects to the Murray, and then it runs into the ocean in South Australia. But the Murray River and the Darling River, by comparison to the Colorado and the Mississippi, it's just a little creek, just a little stream that you can walk across in your boots in a lot of different places. But the snorkels on the utes are kind of for when it does rain and there is some rain around, you can just keep on going.
Yep, you just keep going. You don't need to know where the road is because there's no road markers, but you have the ute, so the snorkel on the ute. So
everything's diesel.
Yes.
So the water doesn't worry it, and turbo diesel, so you can keep pulling the 3-4 tons of whatever on the back, and away you go.
Yep.
But a lot smaller than the F-150s.
Yes, they are smaller than F-150s. I did see a couple of Ram 1500s and F-150s, but they're pretty rare and very expensive. With that, I hope everybody's enjoyed the extended version of the Back from Australia podcast here. I think this has been a great discussion, and I want to say thank you very much, James.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's good to have a good chat about my home country, and look forward to seeing some of the photos that you post up in the group, John. I think everyone will get a kick out of them, and thanks for having me on, and I hope everyone enjoyed it. Yeah, I'll have to do some more of that, so keep on the lookout for more Back from Australia pics. I'd like to round out this 3-part Back from Australia series by expressing gratitude. And I'm going to list off a whole bunch of names. I'm not doing this in any particular order because I learned something from each and every person on this list. So I'm going to start with Schuster's, and I really want to say thank you to them for hosting a meeting, an event at the Barns. And if you're looking for a wedding venue, hey, howdy, that is the spot. The Lanyons and the Radcliffes. Karen Radcliffe, you have the simplest, finest farm financial management system that I have seen anywhere in the world. The Whites and the Cooks, those lamb chops that evening were absolutely delicious. Oxley's for the tour of their chaff mill. The brothers Eckert, what a wonderful story. I appreciated learning about your grandfather clearing the farm and the size and scale. I'm sure that he's proud of what you have achieved. The Cooks, the Huths, Wilkins, thank you all so much for tours of your farms. I appreciate it all. Oh, I almost forgot Alex Peacock along with Beck and Joel Wolf. What fantastic folks. I want to say thank you to Rob Ford with Thrive Agri for a tour of a hay press. Corey at Johnson's, same thing. I really enjoyed that. And then Bryce. Bryce and I have messaged back and forth on social media for what seems like forever, and I finally got to visit Bryce at Multicube. So thank you all for the tours of your hay presses.
And then, great conversations with folks like Rob Lawson and Phil Snowden. And then a special thank you to all the folks at Feed Central that made this trip possible. And the folks at Feed Central, everybody was so good to me. Stephen and Neville and Dave, Jill. And then a special thank you to some of my traveling partners, Alex and Anthony. And most of all to Tim and Megan Ford for making that all possible. Thank you, everybody, so much. And thank you to the Australian Fodder Industry Association for having me down there to speak at your conference. You can invite me back. I'd love to come back to Australia.